Hello and welcome. This is Beginning Rock Keyboards, and I'm Tom Gimbel. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the keyboard before we get started. These are the keys. We've got 76 keys on this keyboard. Standard synthesizer has 64, and a full-blown piano has 88. So this guy is sort of right in the middle. And over onto the left of the keys, we have what we call the modulation wheel. This is the thing that we use to make the sounds change and do the little things like those strange sort of sounds that you hear come from this wheel. On the floor we have two pedals. One is what we call a volume pedal, and of course controls the volume. The other is called the sustain pedal. We use this primarily when we're playing piano sounds. And the notes continue to ring even though your hands aren't on the keys. If you have a synthesizer, there are certain buttons that you'll push to get certain sounds. So we're going to assume that you know how to work your synthesizer, how to get a piano sound, how to get an organ sound. It's usually just a push of a button and you're on your way. So that's the basic layout, and let's get started. Okay, if you want to be a keyboard player, if you're going to be a keyboard player, one of the things that's very important is to think about how you're going to play with other people. In other words, the role of a rock keyboard player in a band. Usually, you're going to be doing one of three things. Maybe helping out with the chords, stuff like that, or percussion stuff, which is in a rock band, it comes in real handy. You know, everyone's rocking with guitars and piano's real good for that high-end percussion stuff. And of course, the other alternative is to be a soloist. Stuff like that. So those are the three things you might be doing, but before you do any of those, you might want to learn the notes. So let's start with the keyboard and let's learn the notes. The first one everyone learns is called middle C. When you sit down to a piano, you sit down, you look, and the chair is usually right behind middle C. Now it's easy to find on the keyboard because if you look, you'll see a pattern. There's two black notes here, then three black notes, and the pattern repeats. Two black notes, three black notes, two black notes, and the one right to the left of that bottom of the two black notes is C. So it's the same no matter where you go on the keyboard. You can always find middle C because it's the one right to the left of that bottom of the two black notes. Okay, now, if we go up from C, the next note is D. The next note is E, right up the alphabet. Next note is F. The next note is G. But that's as far as we go with the musical alphabet, and we start over again with A. A, B, and C again. So here's C, right to the left of the black note, and here's C, right to the black note. So this is what we call an octave. C is here, C is here, C is here, C is here. Any of those notes is still called C. So we can always find it when we get lost that way. So remember, you go up the alphabet, C, D, E, F, G, and then start again. A, B, C. Okay, that takes care of the white notes. Now what about those black notes? They're very mysterious, but they're not really that hard to understand. If you're going up the scale from C to the next black note is called C sharp. We call it a sharp because we're on our way up. The next note, of course, is D. And if we go to the next black note after D, since we're still going up, we call it D sharp. This brings us to E. There's no black note in between E and F, so we go right to F, and then up to F sharp, G, G sharp, because we're still going up, A sharp, that brings us to B, and finally, C again. So we call those black notes sharps when we're on our way up. We're going somewhere, like upstairs. Now, when we're coming down, we call them a different note. Okay, we're coming down, we go to C, we go to B, Then this black note is B flat. We call it B flat because it's in between B on your way down to A. So if you're going down, it's B flat. That brings us to A, and then A flat because we're going down, G, G flat because we're going down, F. There's no black note in between F and E, so we go right to E, and then E flat because we're going down, D, D flat because we're going down, and finally C again. So once we've learned those 12 notes contained in what we call an octave, between C and C there's 12 notes. That's an octave. And the octaves are the same throughout the whole keyboard. Same 12 notes. Same 12 notes. So that's all there is to it. On this keyboard there's 7 octaves, and then these little extra guys on the outside. Pay no attention to them for now. The average synthesizer that you buy at the store just goes from low C all the way up to high C, 5 octaves, you're in business. What I want to talk to you about right now is hand positioning. When you put your hand on the keyboard, make sure it stays up. A lot of people have a tendency to just kind of flop their hand on here, and you can't move around this way. You can't get any speed. It's very, very difficult. If your hand is up like a little bridge, you've got power from your wrist, which is the most important thing. That's where all your power and your strength comes from, and your hand's in a position to move. One of the most important things about playing the keyboard is this little thumb. This little guy just sneaks all over the place, and when you see someone's hand just flying up and down the keyboard, how do you do that? You do it by sneaking that thumb in. So we're going to learn how to do that right like that in a little while, but in the meantime, make sure your hand's up, you're in a position to be properly situated, and you'll have no problems. Okay, now I'm going to teach you about chords. Everybody knows what chords are, but how do we make them? What we do is we construct them based on a simple little formula. Okay? Before I teach you the formula, though, I have to teach you about distance between notes. What we call the distance between notes is intervals. The distance we talked about from C to C sharp is a half step. That is the most basic unit of measurement that we can distance the notes by. C to C sharp is a half step. C sharp to D is another half step. Okay? C to D is a whole step. It makes perfect sense. 2 half steps equals a whole step. So if I ask you, what's the distance between C and D, what's the interval, you could say it's either 2 half steps or 1 whole step. Both answers would be correct. The interval between C and D is a whole step. All right, now we've got whole steps. Okay, if we put 2 of those whole steps together, C, D, E, that interval is a third. If we play the 2 notes together, it's a third. So if we want to make a chord, we need 1 more note. We've got the third, C to E, and now we need the 5th, G. Okay, if you're going to measure an interval, anytime you want to measure it, you can count up on your fingers. C is 1, or what we call the root. Okay, any interval you measure from the root up. C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, G is 5. So the interval, the distance from C to G, we just counted, is 5. So that's our 5th. To make our chord, we have C the root, E the 3rd, and G the 5th. We've just made a major chord, C major, built on the bottom note, the root C. Okay? So there's C major. If we want to build some other chords, we could build a major chord from F. That would be the root of the chord. F, A, and C. We've now made a major chord built up on the root of F, where the F is the root, A is the 3rd, and C is the 5th. So what we have is a formula for building major chords. Now the formula is you need a root, a major third, and a perfect fifth. Now, what does that mean, a perfect fifth? Well, there's two kinds of fifths, perfect and not so perfect. The other word for that is diminished. Okay, that's kind of a tricky word. It just means flatted. C to G is a perfect fifth. If we flat that G and make it G flat, that's become diminished. Diminished means make less. So we flat the fifth and make it diminished if we wanted to make a diminished chord. But we don't care about those. We don't use that in rock and roll. We want perfect fifths. Okay, now we've come to something that's called a power chord. A root and a fifth is a power chord. That's what we like. That's what we use in rock and roll. Is power chords. That's when the guitar player goes, wah! It's a power chord. On keyboards, we do the same thing with organ sounds, root and a fifth. Or the same thing, the same two notes, but with the C on top. That's a power chord. We love those. Okay, let's go back to the major chords. We've got C major. If we were to take that third and make it a minor third, which means flat it, lower it, like we did with the fifth, now we've got a minor chord. So here's C major, here's C minor. Here's F major, here's F minor. And here's C power chord, it's just two notes, the root and the fifth. And here's F power chord, just two notes, the root and the fifth. Okay, we've got a root, a third, and a fifth. Now if we take it one step further, we'll add a seventh to that chord, and that makes it a seventh chord. The only problem is, it sounds like, you know, something by Barry Manilow or something. So we're going to take that note and make it a little bit lower, and now it sounds like something we might want to use. So it's root, third, fifth, and flat seventh. That's got a nicer, bluesier sound to it. So that's how we make a seventh chord. It's a formula. Root is the 1, E is the third, G is the fifth, and this B flat here is the seventh. So now we know how to make a C seventh chord. If we were going to do it in F, F would be the root. We already know how to make an F major. A is the third, C is the fifth. E would be that pretty seventh that we don't really like, so we're going to flat it and make it F seventh, and back to C seventh. So now we've got major chords and seventh chords and power chords. I'm going to show you how to put them together and start playing some rock music in just a second. Okay, now that you know some chords and we're ready to start playing music, I want to tell you about the importance of timing, rhythm. When you play keyboards, it's a percussion instrument. In the orchestra, piano belongs in the percussion department. That's because it has attack, and the timing is so important. You have to practice playing in time, is the way we call it. The best way to get good at playing in time is to practice with a great drummer. Just sit around and jam with them. You know, a really great drummer like Joey Kramer. But if Joey doesn't live in your neighborhood, you're going to have to practice with something or someone else, and the perfect method is to use a metronome. This is a little pocket metronome. I carry it with me wherever I go. In case I want to practice, sit down at my piano. Okay, it's very important to practice at a slow tempo. All the things that I'm going to show you, and whenever you learn something new, it's really, really important to be able to play it correctly at a slow tempo first. You've got to be able to play it slow before you can play it fast. So practice nice and slow and nice and even with the metronome on a slow. And you'll start to develop a sense of rhythm. That's what you need. You start to develop this internal clock, and that's what playing in time is all about. And the only way you get it is from practicing slowly, because the distance in between those notes starts to become second nature. And once you get the distance at a slow tempo, the faster tempo can come. But until you can play slow, you can't play fast. That's the way it works, so make sure you practice at a slow tempo. Okay, now I'm going to show you some chord progressions. What a chord progression really means is just a combination of chords played in a certain order. Now this progression is just made up of 3 chords. I'm going to teach you the 3 chords first, and then we'll see the order they go in. The first chord is E minor. A lot of the times you'll be playing the bottom note of the chord, what we call the root, with your left hand. So the left hand plays E, and the right hand plays this E minor chord, which is made of E, G, and B. Okay, that's the first chord. The next chord is the C major chord. We already know that one. Good old C, C, E, G. Okay, the next chord is a D major chord. This is a new one. D is the root, D is the root, F sharp is the major third, and A is the perfect fifth. That's it. Those are the 3 chords, and now let's see the order that they go in. E minor first, C, D, and then down to C again, back to E again, down to D again. That's the whole progression. E, C, D, C, E, D. Okay, that's the first progression. Practice that at a nice slow tempo with the metronome. C, D, 2, 3, 4, C, E, D, 2, 3, 4, repeat. Okay, that's the first one. The second one is a little bit easier because it's only got 3 chords and they go in the same order every time. Starts off with a C power chord. That means there's no third, just C, C, and a G. C power chord up to E flat power chord. This has an E flat in the bottom hand, E flat and a B flat in the top hand. The third chord is a B flat power chord, B flat in the left hand, B flat and F in the right hand, and back to C again. Okay? Those are just perfect fifths getting shifted around. The order is 1, 2, 3, 4. C, 2, 3, 4. E flat, 2, 3, 4. B flat, 2, 3, 4. C, 2, 3, 4. Practice that until you can get it, play it nice and clean. And now I'll show you the last one, which is like a basic rock blues chord progression. Starts off, again, there's only 3 chords. G is the first chord. We're going to make it a G power chord. G with it in the left hand, G and a D in the right hand. The next chord is C. We already know that one. C, E, G. And the last chord, which also we know, is D major. D, F sharp, and A. Those are the 3 chords that are going to be in this progression. Now I'll show you how they go together. 1, 2, 3, 4, G. 2, 3, 4, G. 2, 3, 4, G. 2, 3, 4, G. 2, 3, 4. C is next. C, 2, 3, 4, G. 2, 3, 4, G. 2, 3. Here comes the D. D, 2, 3, down to C. C, 2, 3, back to G. 2, 3, 4, G. 2, 3, 4. Okay? Every time I count to 4, that's what we call a bar or a measure. There's 4 beats in a measure, and in this progression there's 12 measures or 12 bars. Maybe you've heard of this. It's called a 12-bar blues. And that is where rock and roll came from. So I'll show you how we get to jam on these next. And in the meantime, practice until you can play them nice and even in time with the metronome. Okay, now we're going to learn some scales to play over those chords so we can jam on them. The scale that we use the most in rock and roll comes from what we call the blues scale. It's really the rock scale, but for now, we'll call it the blues scale because originally that's where it came from. All right, starting with C. C is the 1. E flat is the next note. Now that's a minor third away from C. That is probably the most important interval in blues or rock, is that minor third. Da-da-da, da-da-da. And if you think about it, when you were a little kid, you used to do the same thing. Na-na-na-na-na. Well, you were starting to sing a blues scale, you just didn't know it. All right, so here we go, up the blues scale. C, na, na. C to E flat to F. Okay, everything's going fine. It doesn't sound so bluesy yet. Here comes the blue note. C, E flat, F, F sharp, and back down again. C, na, 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 na. Starting to sound a little bluesy. Now, if we take it a little bit further, C, E flat, F, F sharp. Now here comes that tricky thumb creeping under there to get to the G. So, fingering 1, 2, 3, 4 on the F sharp, and then the thumb comes down on the 5, and we're in perfect position to finish out with a B flat to C. C, E flat, F, F sharp, G, B flat, C. That is our C blues scale. And that's where we get all our licks and all our solos from. So you'll see how to use that in a second. If you want to keep going, you go with your thumb to the C. And you can keep going all the way up. Thumb starts again at C. So the thumb does 2 tricky things. It creeps onto the G right here, and then we go to B flat with our second finger, and then it creeps onto the C again, so we can start over again. It's a pretty nice little tricky way of playing that blues scale, and you can go all the way up and down using the same fingering. So practice that with the metronome, nice and slow. Okay? And remember, if you want to go 2 octaves, you put the thumb on the C and keep going. And then come back down. Okay, practice that. Read the fingerings, get it right, nice slow tempo. That's the C blues scale. We're going to use that. The other one we're going to use is the E blues scale. It's the same sound starting on an E. E is the first note. G is the minor third. Da, da, da. Remember that? E to G to A. Now we're going to go A sharp to B to D to E. And back down again. E, D, B, B flat, A, G, E. Okay, you've got your book, you've got the fingerings. I don't have to show it to you again. Practice it with the metronome. I'll show you the next one. G blues scale, starting on a G. G, B flat. Remember that minor third. We're going to use that a lot. Da, 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 da. Okay, G, B flat, C, C sharp. It's all the same fingering. D, F, G. And back down again. G, F, D, D flat, C, B flat, F. Okay, now we know the scale, but we have to learn sort of ways to use it and actually make music with it. You can just run the scale, and I'm going to show you that doesn't sound that bad. But there are little things that we do a lot within that scale that make it work. There's a couple of tricks. One of them is a trill between the 5th and the 7th. Okay, in the key of C, we get up to the G, that's the 5th, and the 7th, the flat 7th, is the B flat. One of everyone's favorite licks. And on the keyboard, since we have this handy little pitch wheel here, which I think you might have seen me doing that earlier, that's one of my favorite tricks. But really, if you want to make music with the blues scale, you have to understand how it's done. A guitar player can bend a note. Can't really do that on a piano. So that's why they invented what we call glitches or glissandos, gliss. It's kind of like bending that note. Okay, so we're starting on the C, going up to the E flat, na na na. There it is again, na na. And then we're coming off that F sharp up to the G and hitting the C together with it up top. And then coming back down, hitting the F sharp and just sliding off of it to the F. E flat C. That's a great one. The other one that gets used so much in keyboard is what we call a turn. All right, so slow it down for you. We start with a C, E flat, F, and then we go to the note above the F and start back down. But we come down a little bit faster, so it's so that so that little rhythmic phrase, that da 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 da, you'll hear all over rock and all keyboards really. That's something that we just do. And one of my favorite ways to do it is in the key of E, which we're going to be using. E, G, A. All right, so here we go again. E, G, A. Now when we hit this A the second time, we slam a D on top of it, and then go up to that little blues note, and come back. And you're hearing that blues scale that I was singing before? Na, 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 na. That's a real good one to learn in as many keys as you can. And the keys that it works really well in are E, like the one we just learned, or in the key of D, or in the key of A. That's what it sounds like slowly, but fast. It really works well. So practice it slowly, then you can speed it up. Now I'll show you how to use some of these licks, tricks, and turns, and we'll play over some music. All right, the first one, we're just going to use the C blues scale. I hope you know it by now. You've got it in your book. You've got the fingering. You've practiced at a slow tempo. It works great over all three chords. Here we go. Here we go. Right up the blues scale. Let's just play the scale first. Now, little ideas out of the scale. Okay, now here's that trick I was showing you. Remember, slide off, slide. Okay, the next one I'm going to show you is in the key of E. We practiced it before, the chords. Now we're going to use that E blues scale that I taught you. I hope you've practiced it at a slow tempo, and I'll show you how it works over these chords. Here we go. Same start. happening. Okay, the last one is the typical rock blues 12-bar progression. Starts off in G, goes up to C, goes back to G, goes up to D, and then goes back to G. I think you know the progression. We learned it earlier, and I hope you know your blues scale in G because we're going to use it, and we're going to play some rock blues. Here we go. Here's the trick. Just come up with the ideas. The most important thing that I can tell you about soloing and making any kind of music is that it's communication. You're communicating, and when you talk to someone, you have to listen also. So when you're making these little ideas, try and think of them as little statements. And you know, someone that talks and never stops like a run-on sentence doesn't work. So make sure you have little pauses. Make an idea, and then take a pause, take a breath. That's what we call phrasing. Sax players and trumpet players do it naturally because they have to breathe, but for guitar players and piano players, we have to sort of make a point of remembering to do that. So if you're talking, don't forget to listen. And if you're playing with a band, it's really important to listen to them and interact with them also. That's the most important thing about soloing, is make it a two-way conversation, not just talking at someone. You're conversing with someone. This is about the end of the tape here. I think we're out of time, but this is just our first lesson, and I hope you get to work on some of this stuff and really get it going before we get to the next tape. And I look forward to seeing you on the next tape, and I hope you had fun with this one like I did. And we'll be rocking here, so hope to see you soon. Bye for now.